And we'll make a start. So welcome everybody to the September Tech Talk with Dext Precision. So we had a couple of months ago, we had Dext Prepare, and we got a very tiny sneak preview of Dext Precision in that session. And there was a lot of interest at the time in seeing more about Dext Precision. So we have Amit and Matthew here. Welcome, gents, and over to you.
Thank you kindly. So I might kick off. I'm Amit Valentine, Head of New Sales APAC here at Dext. I look a little bit different in that photo, but that's once you've moved past that, it's still me. We were on, going back a little bit now, to talk about Dext Prepare, which is the core of what a lot of our loyal subscribers have been used to with us for over 8 years, being part of the Xero marketplace as Receipt Bank and more recently as Dext. So that's the Dext Prepare product that ingests receipts and into your Dext platform and onto your general ledger, which everyone's typically familiar with. Now, Dext Precision is a product that came into fruition last year and has been gaining a lot of traction. It's a very important part of the puzzle for the bookkeeping and accounting journey for a lot of clients. And it's around data integrity. It's around making sure the data that you actually send on to the financial statements and further analysis is accurate, is going to actually give you the information you require that's going to support the business clients that you're, who are in your client base. So it's got a number of, smaller features there. Some of them will be more relevant than others. Matt Rowan, who's our product expert here in APAC, will look to summarize that for you in the best way possible today. So without further ado, I'll kick on with that with Matt, and I'll be on hand with Matt towards the end for any questions you might have.
Thanks so much, mate. Yeah, so I'm the nerd, basically. So I tend to jump in and have a play with the tool. So yeah, just summarizing what Amit was saying, what is Dext? So we've sort of grown past a single product solution. We're now currently 2, coming up next month will be 3, and then hopefully by December we'll have 5 tools that we feel answer a lot of the challenges that might come with data ingestion and management with client information. So we want to build a suite of solutions that are geared around making you as the advisor the sort of centerpiece of what we're trying to support, because one of the things you can't automate with technology is trust. And I think that we feel if we can enable you as an advisor to enable that trust with the client, together we can really drive a lot forward. So again, the whole purpose behind what we do is really to try and strengthen that vision. If I can't. There we go. So Precision, so just to give you a bit of a visualization of where it sits, and then we're going to jump into the actual tool. So we've kind of noticed that, or Precision or Xavier, as previously known, the founders kind of noticed that when they were trying to build forecast models for some of their clients, or even if it was just a case of taking on a prospective new client, data integrity was kind of a big piece that was kind of making that either profitable or not. So the recoverability on a new client could be heavily impacted by that discovery phase being correct or maybe misinformed. And so what we wanted to do is create a tool that enabled you to see what was going on within the file and give, in a matter of minutes, a really good synopsis of whether there were duplicate contacts, if the lock dates were set correctly, things like that can really make a big difference into how much work goes into that file. So we sort of see Precision as this data quality and assurance tool prior to any of your work papers and compliance and the reporting. So it's basically saying, we've got information going into the ledger, a lot can happen while it's there. We want to have a tool that enables visibility over what's going on and if it's correct before we move into the next stage. So we've been really successful. We were Xero's emerging app of the year last year with the Precision tool. So yeah, we've certainly been getting a lot of traction and recently started integrating with QBO. I know a common question I always get asked is, do you integrate with Myob? The answer is not yet. Basically, Myob have been doing a lot of work on their end, and we're just kind of waiting for them to finish before we look at that integration. But definitely, watching with eager anticipation to jump into that solution as well. But without any further ado, let's jump into a Precision. So, cool. Also, for anyone who doesn't know, I like to tell dad jokes if I ask a question and no one answers. So to save all of your sanity, I strongly recommend asking questions throughout. Chuck them in the chat as often as you can. Just to give you a sense of how terrible my dad jokes are, what did one hat say to the other? Stay here, I'm going on ahead, which is, again, just a horrible, horrible dad joke. So again, that's the caliber you've got to put up with if you don't ask questions.
Well, thank you for that, because I did forget to tell people to put questions in the chat box. So yeah, that's good to know. So yeah, feel free, people, to throw questions at us through the session, and there will also be a little time at the end for questions.
Yeah, perfect. And yeah, for Amit's sanity, because he's heard all of my dad jokes, possibly 50 times each, ask lots of questions so that he doesn't have to hear them all again. So yeah, so basically this is the Precision tool. He's got a couple of good ones himself though, so we'll see if we can work those out of him. But yeah, so this is the Precision tool. So effectively, the first thing that I'm going to take you through, there's sort of three main problems we wanted to solve with this. So the data quality and integrity we sort of touched on. So there's three areas that falls in. So first one was quoting and prospecting. So I'll run you through kind of that journey. Secondly, we've got kind of the streamlining of workflow processes. So we wanted to try and make it a bit easier for potentially a new starter or maybe even a more junior member of the team to take on additional responsibilities by making the data checking that needs to be put through the paces simpler and easier for them to process. So yeah, we've seen some really good results in that, actually just not automating, but like making the streamlining of workflows more efficient. And then the third and final one is really about like insights. So what can we learn if we were to look at all of our clients across some key stats? So that's more around sort of like the practice analysis, which we'll jump into as well. And then, some things for the client. So if I was to look at this first and foremost, the first thing that I'll show you here is our data health score. So bear in mind that the data health score doesn't look at the business performance at all. It's looking purely at data integrity. So how good or bad do we think the information is, and putting that into a standardized benchmark across all of the clients. And where this can be really useful is in that sort of quoting and onboarding stage. So if you've got a client and they're happy to connect Precision to their Xero file before you sign an engagement, so you can have a look at what's there. So let's say, for example, my Super Gear client, we've got a health score of 43%. So if I drill down, and the reason that's changed is because I've got a different date range looking at this view versus the previous one. So basically, I've come in and said, right, I want to look at the last financial year. What information can I see, and how much work is going to be involved, so I can price this accurately. So we can see that we've got 1,980 unreconciled transactions. We've got a duplicate contact. We've got 31 contacts going across multiple account codes, 6 duplicate transactions. Our average debtor days is at 180. Depreciation hasn't been run since February of last year, and our lock date sitting at the 31st of March. So there's a couple of things here that we're throwing up as red flags. Now, some of this might just be that it's a simple fix and it's not that big a deal, but other things might actually be a bit more impactful on the workflow. So this just in a matter of minutes, once you've connected the file. So in order to connect the file, you literally just oops, if I come back up here, hit add client, you just hit this connect to Xero or QBO button, and then it starts to synchronize. When it's synchronizing, it looks something like this. So it'll just start pulling that information down from the ledger, and we try to download pretty much everything to analyze it. So it can take a couple of minutes if it's a fairly normal file. If it's a really large file, it might take an hour or two. Just depends on how much transactional volume is sitting in there. But then, yeah, as I said, we can sort of then see all of this information really easily laid out. And if we wanted to actually produce this as a report as part of that quoting and prospecting stage, once that sync is complete, up on the top right-hand side here, we've actually got an export option. So you can export this out to a PDF, and we've made that white label. So if you've got, actually, if I come back up here into the team management section, go into your team profile, you can see here you can upload a logo to the team profile, and that will then rebrand all of those PDF exports within the tool as your own. So you can use those potentially with clients. Perfect. Any questions so far on anything that I've touched on? looks like we're all sort of getting in there.
I might be getting a bit ahead of things at this point, but you mentioned you could connect Precision to your data file in order to do a quote. So before you've actually got permission from the client to do anything, can you, but what if you do this and then they say, no, we don't like your quote, see you later.
Yep.
Is there some, so you might cover this in the pricing later, but I think that would be good to know about is that something that costs, or is that sort of all just part of the fee that we would pay, and you can connect clients and inspect the data, before you actually have an engagement?
Yeah. So really good. So we're going to try and make that workflow a little bit smoother. But yeah, the way it works at the moment, we can do one of two things. And I'll touch on the subscription structure in a second. So effectively, in a workflow perspective, we would either have you be invited into their Xero file as an advisor or an admin so that you can connect it yourself, or you can invite the client in as a team member with restricted visibility so that they can connect their own file to the tool. One of the workflows that we're designing at the moment would be an email invite where you can actually send them an invitation. They can then be taken straight to the connection page, connect the file for you without actually being set up as a user or you being invited in as an admin, just so that you can see it. So those are the kind of two workflows that we've got currently, and a third one that's in the pipeline. And then from a billing
it would be very easy to disconnect if they said, thanks for the quote, we're not going ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So if you just hit those little options on the right again, so if I come in here, you can just see remove. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
So yeah, so you can just dump that off. In terms of billings and structures, so with every subscription that you buy with Dext Precision, we do allow you within the month that number of clients and an additional 10% threshold. So if you are quoting new clients, so let's say, for example, I bought a 10 bundle and I quoted a new client, that would make my number 11. Like, the system will allow you to add that one on for that month. But then if you reach the end of the month, and it might be a situation where, are you going to keep it or are you going to remove it? We just kind of want to know what the plan is. But yeah, so with every subscription, you will have an overage that you can use for quoting and prospecting. Nice. But yeah, hopefully this actually gets greater success though with winning the jobs, because I think oftentimes clients don't understand why the price is different. And I think this is a really good tool. So if I just export this out actually to PDF here, and just sort of show you, like, it's really about explaining, chuck it in there, we go, to the client, like why it's going to cost more, right? So, might have a bookkeeper down the road who hasn't done that much in terms of the discovery, and then you come along and say, well, it's going to cost you a bit more. But the reason being, I found all of these duplicates, I found, all of these unreconciled transactions, all of this information is actually, going to take a bit to clean up, and it's going to have an impact on your business. That's why I'm going to charge you a bit more for the first, maybe period. And then after that, we can see what the ongoing impact is going to look like. So, you can have a more detailed conversation really about this client with this type of report. And it becomes a little bit more visual for them is kind of the goal. Yeah,
great. And is that, I presume somewhere in the settings you can customize those messages, or you can overwrite that, or is that something that's a set in the system?
Yeah, so set in the system at the moment. And yeah, we just designed it to be like, it's just a little blurb, really simple, like what a duplicate contact is. So how we sort of come to that conclusion. So they're just preset templates at the moment, partly because, like, when we initially launched, like, yeah, people kind of liked the idea of having something they can just spit out really quickly. But yeah, I think more and more we're looking at how we might be able to add like enough customization that it's not a huge amount of work, but then not so restrictive that, yeah, you feel kind of locked into something. But yeah, at the moment, these are all just locked in. The only variable for this type of report is obviously the logo. Good questions though. Perfect. All right, so let's jump into, so the second part of this as well. So that's the health score report for quoting and prospecting. But what we're also seeing is more and more often on this activity stats report, we're seeing firms use this as a way of measuring activity or billing with, say, transactional bookkeeping work with clients a little bit more so than, say, like the traditional hourly rate. Reason being, not all transactions are created equal. So we know that, posting a journal is going to take more time than processing a bill or reconciling a bank transaction. But what we wanted to do with this report is just actually show or make it tangible for the client to see, potentially if your fee needs to move, why, and it's more often than not the client's business has actually increased, or, there's an increase in volume somewhere. And so we just want to make it easy for you to highlight to the client, well, the reason we're charging you more going forward is because your business has either grown or it hasn't. And you can look at obviously the last 12 months, or you can expand the date range out to include 2 years, whatever you need. And again, this is another one of those reports that you can export to PDF. So if I show you that one, so yeah, very similar, just, basically just highlights how that transactional volume has trended over time. And in the UK, I think they're doing something to the effect of like £1 per total transaction is kind of like a guide, and then they'll do set packages. The main reason we built this ultimately was to try and help mitigate scope creep, which I know, over the last 2 years in particular has been a problem with all of the COVID measures and everything else, where we're tending to do a lot of volunteer work for clients in some instances. So we just want to, again, make it tangible, make it data driven, so that the pricing conversation is grounded by more than just the expertise, though that's important. We can actually show the client, we've done a little bit more homework here. So those 2 reports tend to get used most for quoting on prospecting. Again, open to any questions from anyone on the chat, or Joe, if you've got anything else that you're curious about.
Not right at the minute, so yeah, carry on.
Yep. Okay. So the other side of this as well is, once we've actually won the job, how can we maybe streamline these processes and actually make things a little bit faster? So we've got a whole range of what we call tools or checks built into each of the systems. So you can see here the unreconciled transactions and so forth. So if I sort of broke it out, we kind of look at the cleanup section as being tools to help guide the like transactional bookkeeping work. Insights has a little bit of an overlap into both the bookkeeping and accounting space. But again, trying to solve or create tools that make certain tasks a little bit easier to do. So if I jump into the unreconciled transactions check, for example, the 3 things that I like to highlight within this tool are, number one, up the top here, you've actually got something called the all statement view. So for anyone who's ever had to search for a transaction across multiple bank accounts in Xero, if you've got quite a few bank accounts, that can be a really painful query to run. So what we've done is actually created a single bank feed with all of the bank accounts in it. So you can just literally search, the amount, or you might come in here and filter out, the reconciled transactions or unreconciled transactions, sort the value by range. And you can see here, we've got all 3 of the bank accounts in this file listed here. So again, or you might even just literally type in a value to search for. So I think that one just makes things a little bit easier if you've got to find an entry. And again,
that's a winner right there. I mean, for clients where you've got sort of 8 bank accounts and they do lots of transfers and there's inter-entity things, that's great. Yeah, to be able to search everything at once. Yep.
Exactly. And this is really good. Like, inter-entity is a little bit harder because this is obviously looking at just one client file, but at least if you've got transfers between bank accounts there, you can line them all up next to each other and just make sure, yep, they've all gone where they should.
I wasn't clear there. Sorry. I was more thinking about, because often they do transfers, between banks and between entities, but then they don't necessarily code it all correctly. So then we can, search everything at once for those sorts of errors.
Yeah, exactly. And the intercompany loan check is one of the ones that we're building at the moment. So we are going to create a tool that allows you to see, let's say, for example, you've got 3 or 4 entities, and if there's a particular account code in each of them that is like, the loan accounts or in and outs, we're going to try and basically map that out so we can see that they all balance off the way that they should. And if there's money missing, highlight that. So that's a future tool, but I'll stay in the realm of the present. The other thing that I quite like about this is also that last activity statement. So oftentimes within Xero, like a bank feed will just drop out, and you won't know that there are things not coming through. So we've actually created a little bit of a tool here to say, hey, look, the last time we saw any activity on the bank accounts was, the 31st of the 7th. And so in that scenario, we might say, oh, actually, that's getting pretty old. Let's go in and just double check that they're connected properly. And so we've tried to highlight that here as well. What I also like about this is oftentimes in Xero, particularly like the payables, receivables, and bank feeds aren't always in the same screen. So sometimes you can have items going through to the payable section, for example, but someone's actually just reconciled that off of the bank feed. And so you've got this item marked as paid that just sits on the ledger and never actually gets reconciled. So if we actually look at each of these bank accounts individually, so if I open up the main account, for example, so we can see here the total number of bills that have been marked as paid, total number of receivables, and then obviously the bank statement lines as well. So if I expand this out, I can see what bills are sitting there, how old they are, and if I wanted to then cross-reference that against the bank statement lines, I can see those here as well. And if I need to go into Xero for any particular reason, we've got this, what we call deep linking functions. So you can go straight to those entries in Xero to then create the edits and make the changes. So it'll take you straight to those items. And then one of the last things I like in this tool, for example, is like the unreconciled impact. So sometimes you'll have clients who like to do some of their own work, but then we'll give you a call and say, hey, something's broken down. I need to know if I've got enough money to replace this piece of equipment. And if they haven't got the bank fully reconciled, that can be a bit of a guess. And so what we thought we would do is just create a simple tool to say, right, if everything on the bank feeds that we've got is related to the P&L, what does that then look like as an unreconciled impact? So we can give you a better guess as to how much cash they've actually got available to them. Yeah, cool. So that bank reconciliation check, as I said, we wanted to highlight all of those things. And then this impacts the health score. So once we actually bring the reconciliation up to date, it'll obviously improve the overall health score of the file. And then we can sort of like move down into some of these other checks. So duplicate contacts is another one that's really frustrating. Xero, it's really easy to create a new contact. And if anyone wasn't in our last session for Dext Prepare, you may have missed that we've got a tool in there that helps you sort of like merge contacts at that side, because I have had so many people say to me like, oh, Dext Prepare just creates new contacts all over the place. Yeah, machine learning is certainly no replacement for a human being. So there is a little bit of teaching that needs to be done there. But if you do have that scenario arise, we wanted to make it a bit easier to clean that up. So this looks at both suppliers and customers. And if we can see here that, you know, we've got a contact name that looks very similar, you can change the thresholds. So you can go to an extreme degree of similarity or a low degree of similarity. So if I went to low and then expanded my date range out a bit, I might get a fair few more contacts. And if you change any of the parameters within the app itself, you just hit this recalculate button and it'll recrunch those numbers. And so, yeah, we can see here we've got a few more results. Some of these might actually be definitely duplicates. So if I went into Bruce Wayne here, that would take me straight to the contact card so that I could go through and merge it. And then once I've actually merged the contact in Xero, in order to get that to reflect in Precision, we just need to hit this little sync with Xero button up on the top left or up on the top of the screen here, just so we can pull through that new information to make sure that it's actually been done within the Xero file. So a lot of the time we see that we streamline processes because this does one of two things. It kind of makes it a bit more accountable for the team member who's actually going through and doing the work, because it needs to be done in Xero in order to clear it in Precision. But then there's the second side where it's actually just saving a lot of effort, because I don't know anyone who sort of actively goes through and manages their duplicate contacts, just because, yeah, it can be a bit of a task. So hopefully if we can make this a bit easier, that can have flow-on benefits to other processes. Yeah, so some other ones here, multi-coded contacts. So just being able to highlight, if you've got a contact that's been coded across multiple tax codes or multiple account codes, we can show which one, they're most often going to. So for example, in this case, Aldi going to motor vehicle expenses doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So again, we could just drill down into that and see what the story is. And if that's incorrect, then we could shift and change that up. And again, you can use these little quick filters at the top here to limit it to just say the revenue side or just the expenses or just the account code or tax code. So again, just really simple and easy to go and clean that all up. However, now we get into contact defaults and dormant accounts. So this is actually a section where Xero's API will allow us to make changes from this app to Xero. So you can see here that what we've identified, unlike the multiple coded contacts, this contact appears to go to the same tax code or account code each and every time, but it's not currently set up as a rule in Xero. So to minimize the risk of human error, we can push that through as a default to the contact in the Xero file. Or if it's a dormant account code, we can just say here, like, we haven't seen any activity on these accounts for more than 2 years. Did you just want to archive them? You can do a select all and maybe deselect a couple, and then archive the account codes that you don't need anymore. You've also got this dismiss option as well. So if you do see something that you go, oh, actually that's meant to be that way, you can just simply dismiss that. That'll go into this dismiss section though. And if it ever needs to be undone or reviewed, you can come in here and undo that fairly easily. Yeah, duplicate transactions. I quite like this one. So if you're using Dext Prepare already, we've got duplicate detection, quite good duplicate detection on that app already running. But if you're not using that and you're using some other OCR tool, that's fine. We just wanted to create a slightly better version of duplicate detection within Xero, but basically because like Xero relies on like the invoice number. And that can oftentimes be a problem, particularly if something maybe has been coded off of the bank feed, there's no invoice number to cross-reference against, and so they just sort of sit there and don't get detected. So what we've done is actually looked at the contact card and the total amount, plus or minus a certain number of days. So if we see a similar transaction within a certain time frame, we can just show here, we've got a Caltex invoice 5507, one's come in via the Dext Prepare or Receipt Bank app, and one of them has been reconciled off of the bank feed. So that might actually be a duplicate, whereas say this Aldi Stores one, they might just happen to be very similar amounts at very similar times. So we can easily either dismiss it or actually go in and action that item as well. Final one in this section, and I'm going to get a bit wriggle on, is our Abn Validation Tool. So this has actually been a really popular function, particularly over the last TPAR cycle. We launched this in, I think it was like the first week of July or last week of June. But effectively, what we wanted to highlight in here were transactions that had missing ABN numbers, contacts that had missing ABN numbers. So if I just go back to say like the 1st of July through to 30 June, example. So we'll do sort of 4 things. We'll check for contacts that don't have an ABN number and that potentially should. And then once we've got that ABN number in there, we can then check to see if the ABN number is correct. So does it appear on the ABR? And also what's the GST registered status of that business? And have we coded our transactions in line with their registered status? So to make TPAR reporting a little bit more streamlined, or maybe even just like making sure we've collected or paid the correct amount of input tax credits. Yeah, this function seems to be getting a bit of fanfare at the moment. So effectively, you just come in. So let's say, for example, we're going to look at our GST on expenses codes that have got no ABN. You can use this in a way of sort of filtering it down as well. So if this was for TPAR, you might not actually need ABN numbers across all of the contacts. So you might just come into your filter section here and filter by the account code and just simply say, right, I only need, ABNs for contacts that are subcontractors or contractors. I'll just use subscriptions as an example. So here are the contacts that have been coded to that account code that are missing an ABN number. And so you can then use our little find ABN function. So this will query the ABR and it will then bring up a list. So you can then say, right, actually, it doesn't look like I've got the results. Let me refine that a little bit. So I might say Apple Proprietary Limited. Okay, perfect. So that looks like the correct one. I can expand out and look at all of the other trading names as well. So you might actually get a result that doesn't seem correct, but when you expand out the trading names, it's literally got it in that section. And then if you know this is the correct one, you can scroll to the right-hand side and push the details into Xero. So we'll take the state, the postcode, and the ABN number and populate that into the contact card for you, so that we can then track the registered status of the business. So yeah, so that one's been quite a good tool. We're getting some good response to it. There's still some things that we want to do to improve it, but hopefully, again, that's going to save you a lot of time. One practice that we tested this with said that was going to save them, I think it was like 6 hours at TPAR time. They just literally smashed through it all, and now they just use this as part of a monthly process. So they just go through every month and just double check what's missing, populate it, and double check the GST status. So it's an ongoing maintenance process now, rather than leaving it to the end of the year. It's something that you can do throughout. That's not going to add a whole lot of time to, the existing monthly checks.
Yeah, that's fantastic, having that all integrated and then being able to, sync back to Xero, and the GST treatment per ABN. that's great as well, rather than having to manually check what's been done.
Yeah, exactly. So like we can just come in and see here. So here's all of the entries. We can see here that, they've been coded to GST on expenses, but, the contact doesn't appear to be registered for it. Now, it could be one of two things. It could be the wrong ABN number that's been put on it. That happens a lot where you've got, say, like a unit trust, the ABN's on the invoice, but actual trading entities are different ABN. So it might be something as simple as that. Or it might be a simple case that, they're a smaller business that wants to look a little bit bigger and are charging GST when they shouldn't. So that one happens all too often. My favorite one though, actually, and this is something we'll put into the invalid section soon, is we'll actually start cross-referencing trading name with contact name. So I know that there were a lot of people out there at one point who had like the Bunnings ABN number as their own because they just didn't know where to get one. So what we want to start doing is in future iterations of this is actually alerting you to when a contact trading name doesn't align at all, even though the ABN number appears. So yeah, there's some cool things that we want to do to keep this keep improving this one. But as it currently stands, it's made a really big impact to the users that we've tested it with. And then the other way around here, so if we can see here, Bunnings Warehouse has gone to GST free expenses. It's definitely registered for GST. So, that might be an opportunity for us to go in and correct that and claim where we need to. So that's everything in kind of the cleanup section. So again, that's more around sort of that sort of transactional bookkeeping maintenance and data quality. Some of the tools here in the insight section, and just in the interest of time, I'll probably try and race through a little bit more. But again, if you've got questions, chuck them in. A really popular function with a lot of like the year-end sort of clients that we've seen is this historical changes. So Xero recently released a feature where it will look at the prior quarter for any historical changes when you're going through the BAS cycle. We have sort of an unlimited range. So we can look at any financial period and then see if there have been any changes since a certain date. To highlight what entries might have been amended or adjusted. And so you can then come in here and see, the GST accounts moved by a certain value. Okay, I need to go in and have a look at those transactions. Why were they changed after I've, already lodged the GST return? So yeah, we wanted to give you a way of like setting the parameters and then going straight down to the particular transaction. So yeah, that one is again another really cool one. I think it's really important, especially when the trial balance doesn't line up and you sit there going, "Sweet mercy, what have they done?" It's just a quick way to find out where we are. The other one here I quite like as well as this lock date history. So if you can, set the lock date within your Xero file, but someone goes in and changes it, oftentimes you don't get alerted to that at all. And so what we've done is created a bit of a log. Unfortunately, we can't marry up the user. Xero's API doesn't let us get that information, but we can at least let you know what it was on a particular date, when it was changed, what it was, and what it's been changed to. So if it ever goes backwards in time, those 3 dates might actually comprise the historical changes check that you want to run. Perfect. Then within fixed assets,
I love that for the business owners who do a lot in their own accounts, and then insist that they haven't changed a thing. And you get to the next BAS and none of it reconciles, and yeah, that'll be great for those clients.
Yeah, well, we found this one really useful with surprisingly the New South Wales stimulus measure at the start of this lockdown, because they had to compare July of 2019 with July of 2021, but it was on the accountant to validate that everything was correct and that they were eligible for the stimulus, which is a total crock, because you can go back and chuck in a whole bunch of sales in July of 2019, make it look like you've got a 30% tip, and then just delete it afterwards, and suddenly you get that, but it's on the accountant. So this was actually a really popular function for that period of time, because they could actually go back to July of 2019 particularly and see if there were any changes made since the announcement. So you could easily spot when someone was trying to fudge the figures.
Well, it'd be fun to get the stats on that, just to see if that actually happened very often.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we'll see. Some people are a little bit sort of advantageous in scenarios, but for the vast majority of the time, it's literally, I think, just ignorance. Like, again, business owners don't want to do anything wrong. It's just literally sometimes in the heat of getting all of their things done, they'll enter something in the wrong date, or, they might go in and change something they didn't mean to. So yeah, this is just a great way to make sure that if they have made an error, we can easily spot it and pick it up. The fixed assets section, Xero's fixed assets doesn't get used as much here as it does, say, in the UK. But again, if we can see, like, we've done an import from another ledger into Xero, and if for whatever reason the asset accounts don't match up, this is just a really quick and easy way to reference and see, right, what's going on, with these particular accounts, so we can see the asset transaction versus the account transaction. Yeah, we're sort of missing the other side. So this can just be a really good way to validate that. If you're running depreciation assets through the fixed assets module of Xero, one of the things I quite like is actually having this depreciation run date in what we call our focus or flows section. So you can basically take any one of these tools, put them into a task list, and then that data gets pulled into the task list itself. And again, if you click on that, it'll take you straight through to the assets module within Xero so that you can run the depreciation. So again, it's just about reducing the amount of time you have to navigate to and from points. So we've tried to, as wherever possible, either drop you at the doorstep where you need to be in Xero, or if we can, in some limited circumstances, try and even perform the action for you. Yeah, age balances, so looking at our age receivables and payables. Our control accounts, this is actually a really fun one as well. So effectively what we've done is giving you the ability to map out an account code. So in this case, I've taken the liability account for the wages and payroll. And what we've done is just mapped out all of the journals that get posted to the account and all the payments that get made. So in this particular scenario, I owe my staff over $600,000 in unpaid wages. Now that might be true, or it might just be that I'm not actually recording the journals or making the payments, sorry, to those accounts. So it could be 6 months worth of missed postings, or it might actually be that I should go to jail. But if you do see that there's an error, what we kind of tried to do with this is not highlight that there was something wrong with the balance sheet code, because it's easy to know when it's not right. It's knowing when it was incorrect. And so if you hover over any of the bullet points here, you'll see that there's a balance that appears sort of to show you what the balance was at that particular point and on what date. So if you can see here that, let's say, for example, on the 10th of February, I can see that there's a bit of an anomaly in the pattern. I might scroll then down to the 10th of Feb and see what was going on, and then go through to that transaction in Xero. So again, just trying to shortcut to the actual issue to try and save time. Gosh, I'm always running out of time. But yeah, there's a whole lot of different tools in here to unpack. So I might, unless anyone's got anything that they're looking at and going, yeah, I really want to know more about that. There's a couple of different things around, like cost and sales analysis, our business resilience section, some GST specific returns and so forth. And then also this tool called the Sandbox. Yeah, I wish I had time to go through all of these, but yeah, feel free to start a trial and actually go through this, because again, there's a lot in here to unpack and definitely use. But let's say hypothetically, I wanted to build a sort of ad hoc report in here. I might just come in here, switch this over into pivot mode. And what I can do with this is it's kind of like, yeah, a pivot table in Xero, but on the transactional data within your Xero file. So if I wanted to make a slightly different version of an activity stats report, for example, I might come in here and say, I'm just going to look at my expenses, transactions, but across the columns, I might grab the tax name, and I'm going to drag that down to my column label here. And then I'm going to also look at my account code, the contacts, and then maybe the hyperlink into Xero. So easily you can create a report in here that allows you to then scan through and see, right, is everything coded to where it should be? I might see here office expenses has got GST free, which seems odd. So I can then expand that out and then have a look at these Woolworths transactions to see why they were coded to GST free. Might be fine, might be not. But it's just a slightly different way of seeing where the errors might be. And then once I'm happy with everything, I can move on to the next client. So if you like this type of report, you can then save it as a custom report, give it a name. And then what I quite like is, if the parameters aren't too specific, you can then use our little client switcher icon up on the top left here to replace this report's data from Supergear to one of your other clients. So instead of having to like create a report in each one, you can just create a set of parameters and then just dump the data out for client A and then import the data for client B while staying in the same screen. So yeah, there's some really, really cool little tools there. But what I wanted to show you as well is the focus section. So we want to try and make it easy to actually pull all these tools into a structure, particularly for junior team members. So this focus section is where you can create what we call flow templates. So it might be a particular job. You know, let's say, for example, our monthly bookkeeping. So here are the tasks or jobs that I want completed within that monthly bookkeeping process. So you can literally come in here and create anything that you want. So that's an example of one that's already completed. But if I was creating a new one, it's really simple. Oops. Ooh, we didn't update last. Oh, sorry.
Is this simply as a reference list, or can you actually schedule it and assign it and do a full workflow process plan?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So you can come in here and do a one-off
brilliant.
flow from that template, or you can create a repeating job. Yeah. So that's it. So we want to create the structure. We can then use that template. You can then go in and assign it and set it up on a recurring basis. And then what I like to see is when team members have done that, the more junior members of staff can literally just log in, go to their jobs list, look specifically at the jobs that are in their name. So I've only got one technically in my name at the moment that's not started or currently in progress. So I can hit start on that and fire that flow off, and it'll pull in that data and those different checks into the flow list that we designed. So yeah, we can come in here and see the information as it pulls through, and then I can go through that, action the items, tick things off, or mark them as complete, and leave comments on the section. So dad jokes are awesome.
And everybody can view the comments.
Everyone can view the comments.
And
exactly.
Is it flexible in that you could say set up a check, month-end checklist, and 80% of your clients, that's appropriate, but the other 20% all need special tasks added to their checklist, so has it got that flexibility?
Yeah, we'd probably just say set up a second template, because you can easily duplicate them. So let's say that this is the stock standard, but there's going to be some variations on this. So if I hit the little options on the right, I can duplicate this flow, and I could call this one,
cost review for XYZ client.
Yeah, exactly. So
okay.
XYZ. And so that way you can then just select that flow for that client specifically, and again set it up on the same schedule so that it just says, right, this is going to occur at the end of every month, or whatever the process might be. So it's got that kind of, and then what I quite like about this is the flow dashboard. So if you're a team lead, or if you're trying to manage a remote working team, because everyone knows we're kind of getting pushed more and more to working from home because it's far more comfortable to work in Ugg boots over winter. Don't know if anyone's going to join me on that vote, but I think Ugg boots are the ugliest but most comfortable things in the world. So anyway, if we come in here, we can say, right, well, actually, I want to see where my team are up to with certain jobs. So I might group by the individual team member. I might then turn around and say, well, actually, let's reprioritize this so I can see how they're progressing with the job. I might even filter out the jobs that have already been marked as complete. So we'll shorten the list down, and then I can drag over this number of required checks and number completed. So this just gives me a way to see very easily like who's got capacity and who doesn't if someone's away. And I might then just save that as a custom dashboard for me to go and view and use. So I can then come back and refer to this and say, right, well, Jackie, for example, has got one job, hasn't really started it. If I wanted to see here, the due date might be getting pretty close. So I can then say, right, well, maybe I need to help Jackie, or maybe it's a situation where I can reprioritize it to Jess, because it looks like she's actually completed her flows. So it's kind of good in that way. But you can also set up reviewers as well. So actually, I don't know if I've got a reviewer on this one. No, I don't. Hold on, let me switch to someone else's flow. Actually, I'll go to one that's I'm the reviewer for. So here you go. So this is a T-part checklist that I put together. My team member, Nadine, actually completed this and said, yep, everything was looking fine. Charles is adorable. As you can see, the comments are fantastic. And then, I might add some closing comments here and say, yes, I'm happy for that to be marked as complete. Or it might be a situation where we might say, actually, no, I'm going to hand that back to the team member. Oh, that's right. And that's because I've got a second reviewer on here, Jackie. So that's where it's sitting at the moment. But if I go back to my under review ones, see the health one. Oh yeah, no, I'm waiting for Phoebe to finish this one as well. So yeah, so you have an option here to either mark it as complete or to hand it back to the team member with some notes. So again, we want to make it really easy to structure what your tasks are. There are some people that tend to say, well, hold on, I'm already using XPM or I'm using some other sort of tool. We're not trying to replace practice management solutions. We just know that in most of them, the task list is kind of an afterthought. Like they're primarily focused on like the billing and time measuring and, email correspondence tracking and all those sorts of things. And then it kind of gets to the task list for a job and it's just literally a bunch of tick boxes. We wanted to make it a bit more dynamic, make it a bit more accountable, and hopefully in the process, make it a bit quicker as well.
So on that note, this looks to me so far like my workflow could only be relevant for the clients that are in either Xero or QuickBooks Online. So if we've got clients on other software or, that we can't actually include them in this workflow.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we'd probably see and what we've seen with a lot of our practices is, let's say, for example, they're using something like XPM already. They would leave all of their jobs and stuff in there, but they've got a little step at the start, if in Precision, go to Precision to complete the job. So the jobs and all of that still gets managed in the practice management solution, but the task list for that particular client gets shortened to, complete flow and attach proof rather than having all of the individual steps in there.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And then the other side of this tool, which we won't have enough time to do justice, but it's always the way with me, is the practice dashboard. So it's a lot easier to get a client to utilize more of your services than it is to go and get an entirely new client. But oftentimes the challenge that we have is knowing what to talk about and when. So what we've done with this tool is we've taken some stats out of the Xero files and the QBO files to create what we call this practice dashboard and the activity stats. So this is a way for us to say, build some reports that might all highlight to us, some opportunities to talk with the client. So let's say, for example, if I just go to one that I've built earlier, just in the interest of, some time back. So if I go to this debtor days and cash report, so what I've done is just simplified a report and said, right, here's my client list. Here's the number of unreconciled transactions in them. So this kind of lets you know if they're up to date or not. And so if they are up to date, we can then look at the right-hand side here and see what their debtor days were, what their debtor balance is, and their cash position. So maybe this is a way of us identifying which clients are eligible for maybe some taxation planning. It might be something along the lines of just introducing some automation for their receivables. So actually highlighting here that, they're potentially taking a long time to get paid, or maybe it's just a one-off invoice in this files case. But, the idea behind this is just to sort of highlight what the client might actually need and look at it across the entire client base. And we can also use what we call tagging to filter this list. So let's say, for example, I'm looking for a client who's currently utilizing me for compliance, but I might want to start utilizing more month-to-month services. So I could come in here, go to my tag section, and filter out by a certain tag. And to create a tag, you just literally come into the configuration and tag section, and you can just create kind of whatever you want. So it might be the service you're offering, it might be the frequency with which you're meeting with them, it might even be the state that they operate in, or maybe even like the pricing bundle they're on. You can come up with a myriad of different options here. And the idea is then once you've got that, you can just select the tag and then tag the clients that are appropriate for that particular item. And so, yeah, you can use that to filter out.
Yeah, that's great. We probably better talk about pricing and
yes.
And I've got a few questions. So give us a realistic idea of how much time it would take to get set up to just use the basics, and then how much time is it going to take to get to know the product really well?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of like pricing, so we sell in bundles of 10 and it's $10 per client file. So if you buy 10 client files, you've got $100 in total spend. So let's say it's $120 per client over a course of a whole 12 months. So it doesn't take a lot to get the basics down. We do offer a 30-day onboarding as part of the subscription purchase. So anything 10 and above will get assistance in the setup. But yeah, the basics I think are pretty easy to get down. I think the biggest challenge oftentimes is integrating that flows section, just because how it's always been done versus how it's going to be done going forward. Change can be a little bit uncomfortable, but we try and make that as easy as we can. But in terms of setting up a client file, there's only really 4 steps. You just need to add the file. Once you've got the file added, you then just want to make sure that you've assigned under the configuration section here who's going to be responsible for that client. So, who's the account owner 1 and 2. Visibility is by default set to 0 users only, but you could change it to the whole team or specific users. In the overview configuration, just selecting what the default reporting mode will be. And then the final step here is mapping out those liability accounts for, oh, that's right, the annual leave one there as well. Yeah, if I show you in here, like the wages payable and so forth. Oh, that's right, because it's a global file. Sorry, let me switch over.
Don't worry about that detail. So
yeah, so it's really easy to set up.
When you say though that integrating the workflows takes time, I mean, are we sort of saying, it's I don't know, half a day, a month to kind of, what's an idea like to how long to really get to know the product and to be using it well?
Like if you dedicate some time to it, I think that you could really get to know it within the space of a week. We do have resources and training videos to sort of help with that journey. But yeah, it's not, the tools themselves are designed to be similar to what you're already doing, just potentially in a slightly different way.
More efficient.
So,
and if you had to, so think about our world being BAS agents, not accountants, and you knowing what your product can do, because obviously it does a great deal and more than what we've seen. What would be your top 3 features for BAS agents?
Oh, good question. Okay. Yeah, this is a really good question. You're getting me excited now. Poor Amit's just sitting there going like, Matt, don't get him worked up right at the end of the presentation. So I really like this tool, the tax review by code. So this is a dynamic version really of the activity stats report. But what you can do in here is literally come in and say, right, here's the period that I'm looking at. Here's my table of transactions that have been coded to BAS excluded in the relevant period. But I can group the information by the account code and then just literally go, right, are there any account codes here that shouldn't be under BAS excluded? And if I see like advertising, okay, I can then go and fix those transactions up really, really easily. Or I might even use these little quick filters up the top here to narrow it down to the balance sheet, profit and loss codes, and I can narrow it down to revenue and expenses. So I really like this one because it gets you through that review process within the BAS a lot quicker than what Xero does.
All right.
So yeah, I really like that one. The other one, BAS agents, the flow is actually pretty good, but I like the control accounts section for like just looking at making sure the wages are there and sorted. There are some things that we'll be releasing fairly soon. So you may have seen a sneak preview of that. We've built an integration with Xero's payroll as well. So we're going to do a whole host of different checks around the payroll section. But yeah, I'm trying to think specifically the BAS. I think, tax review by code is awesome.
Well, I'm loving the ABN check and all of the GST review on that validation. I think that's great.
That's a good one as well.
Okay, in our last couple of minutes, is there anything else we need to know about pricing or questions if people want to contact you guys?
Yeah,
else?
to add one quick thing there. I guess the first 30 days is your onboarding journeys. You'll have a dedicated onboarding consultant who'll go through that process with you. So yeah, there is some time investment involved on your side, but it's not a great deal, we don't believe. The 30 days is those people are targeted to bring on as many clients as possible to fulfill your bundles, so to get the adoption. And then after, you pass on to your account manager, who does basically the same thing, but also fuels any other queries you might have moving forward. So it's quite simple. The pricing, it goes sort of 10 bundles, 10 and 20. But what we find is that the people that have found the most benefit are the ones that have sort of put it across their whole client base and sort of got that benefit across their processes, so that they can try to streamline it into really just one process if possible. We had a client come on for 100 clients. It was $8.80 per month, $8.80 a client. So it's a lot less expensive than Prepare, if you want to look at it that way. But the efficiencies they got from that particular client was quite astronomical. So I think a bit more analysis, perhaps a trial, or get in touch with one of us, and then we can obviously do a demo for you that's more customized.
And is there pricing bundles for both products, or are they actually treated separately and billed separately?
Yeah, it's separately. I mean, you can get both. It's very common that we would have one presentation for you in an hour. You invest an hour, we can show you how Prepare can benefit you, and then also in the same journey, Precision as well. So that's a very common conversation.
Yep. Yeah, so we've got one question there. Are there any videos on YouTube or similar to get to know the basics?
Yes, we actually have an entire YouTube channel, and we've broken it up into different modules. So Mel Dowie, who was a bookkeeper in practice for many, many years, she's actually hosted that series and has taken the approach of what she would do with Precision if she was still in practice. So yeah, there's I think about 4 modules on that YouTube channel. So if you just go to Dext Precision on YouTube, there's a channel there that you can jump in, and there should be some. I think each of the videos are only about 5 minutes long, but they're kind of broken up into 4 different modules or playlists. So yeah.
Great. Okay, fantastic. Any final questions, people, before we wrap up? I will, as usual, put the recording up on the website. It'll be in the newsletter. And Amit, I think we've got you as a contact. So if anyone's got any questions about signing up or getting a customized demo for yourself, I think that's correct. Is it not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. All right.
Look,
well, that was a whirlwind tour, but looks fantastic. I'd certainly like to see the whole thing in depth, but that looks like it might take 2 hours.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack, and I think as well, like when you try and show everything the tool's got, it can really blow out the time. But like there are some processes that you just wouldn't need half the checks, so you can focus in on those, and hence why we've called it the focus section. So I'd probably start there if I'm learning, just like pick out a process that you're currently doing, map out some of the checks that you want to use, and then try using those. Because if you try and learn each and every single one of the checks all at once, it'll take a while. So hot tip. But look, thank you so much. Amazing.
Yeah, no, thank you. Fantastic to see that. And thanks everybody for attending, and we'll be back next month with don't forget who's on. Sorry, I was going to say, and then I've forgotten. I had to rearrange because we had a few issues last month. But anyway, thanks everybody. Thanks Amit. Thanks Matt.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.